Welcome everyone to Mass Timber March Madness. Excited to have Kevin Naranjo from the U.S. Forest Service, who will be speaking about the Wood Innovation Grant Program, which he leads at the U.S. Forest Service. Kevin, your desktop seems to be live. Take it away, please.
Thanks, Greg. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're at. It's good afternoon for me. I'm Kevin Naranjo. I'm the Wood Innovations Program Manager in our Washington office for State and Private Forestry. So part of my portfolio is managing our wood innovation grants. I also manage and work quite heavily in topics related to mass timber. So I do appreciate the opportunity to present and to speak at this call. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about our Wood Innovations team, our Wood Innovations Grant Program, kind of in general, some of the things that we've done. And then I'll go into its relationship to mass timber and cross-laminated timber and how we've supported markets in that industry. So again, thank you, and I'll go ahead. So Wood Innovations, this is actually an old photo, but we have a Wood Innovations team. So we have people in the Washington office. We work with the Forest Products Lab, and then we work we have a regional coordinator in each region of the country, one person. And I'm guessing at some point, many of you have probably touched base or contacted with one of our coordinators. They're the ones who do all the heavy lifting for our grants program. And so as we're part of the Forest Service, right? So most of us, we work for our state and private forestry. We work closely with the National Forest System. We work with other state and private forestry entities and then we work with the research, and we work closely with the Forest Products Lab. So right, to ideally bring the best service to you all and be able to help with move our program forward and be able to help you with the things that you want to do. And as I said, there's a coordinator in each region of the country. It's kind of how we break ourselves up. So we have someone in Alaska, the Pacific Northwest, California. We have our northern region. So we're spread out through all parts of the country. Obviously, the greatest amount of national forests are in the West, but so just to be clear, so our program, Wood Innovations Grant Program, we work with both state forestry, private forest, and national forest. So our program supports all forested lands, right? So we aren't just focused on national forests. So Wood Innovation Grant. So we have two grant programs now, and I'll talk about the Wood Innovations Grant Program. So that is a competitive grant program. It is the RFP for that program goes out every week in October, generally during Forest Products Week, and then we get people submit their grant proposals. If they're smart, they work with our coordinators to sharpen up their proposals so they can meet our needs, and then they're due in January, and we announce winners sometime in ideally end of May or end of April or 1st of May. So this year, FY21, we're going to be able to award $7.62 million in grant funds. So each project, generally, we allow people to ask for up to $250,000 in federal funds, and then they have to have a one-to-one match in their funds. So what is it that why does this grant program exist, or what are we trying to do? We're trying to stimulate wood product markets and wood energy markets. So we're trying to help move the industry along. And so our goals are the reason our goal is to reduce hazardous fuels, improve forest health, improve forest management, and by that we mean to be able to reduce the cost to do forest management and allow for better forest management on the ground, and then promote economic and environmental health in our generally rural communities. Most of our grants are trying to support rural communities. So The other grant program we have, and it's a new grant program, the Community Wood Energy Wood Innovation Grant. We've shortened the name to the Community Wood Grant. So that was new in FY20 last year. This year we're going to be able to award up to $2 million, and that's ideally to fund equipment purchase for both wood energy projects and innovative wood product facilities. And then the goals of this grant are to expand thermally led community wood energy or innovative wood product opportunities, improve forest health, and stimulate local economies. So there's a theme in that: improve forest health. Just about everything that we do, and I think our partners, when we utilize wood products, ideally we want to have a positive impact back on the ground. I think that's pretty important. That's starting to become more of the conversation, particularly around mass timber, which I think is very exciting. So just for some, I'm going to go through some numbers here now shortly. So just for perspective, last year we awarded 35 grant proposals, and those proposals were spread out over 19 states, and there was one in Puerto Rico. 27 of those proposals were for related to wood products, and of those 27, 21 of those were related to mass timber, a mass timber proposal. And then we also awarded 7 wood energy proposals. Wood energy is, we're seeing a lot of sawmills upgrading their process energy or process heat, right, and burning off residuals. And then ideally they can gain residuals from other surrounding industry, because that's becoming a big problem. So those types of wood energy proposals we're pretty keen on. We certainly like to see more wood energy for electric power, but that's somewhat market dependent, but we are seeing some of that. And then with our community wood program, we awarded 7 wood energy proposals in 4 different states. And so in FY20, we awarded a total of $9.12 million in grant funding, which was great. And then I said for FY20 we anticipate, but I think what I really mean is for FY21 we anticipate awarding $9.62 million in grant funding, close to $10 million in grant funding this year. So we're currently in our review process for both our grant programs for the wood innovations and the community wood. And just briefly kind of on that, when we review our grants, all of our grants are they're sent to those regional coordinators. Right? We have one coordinator in each region, depending on, so if your proposal takes place in one of those states, it's sent to those regional coordinators. The regions then take those proposals and they review them, and then they give them a rank of importance they think for the region. They identify proposals they think may have some national implication, and then they forward those results up to our Washington office, and then we bring together a national review team. So we have a separate national review team for the wood innovations and the community wood. And those review teams, they're given a set of grading criteria, and then they will grade those proposals. They're given a number, right, 1 through 100 points, and then we kind of take those out and we take a look, compare them to what the region said they wanted to have, where they thought their priorities were, and eventually we may consult with some other partners on some of our technical partners for our grants, just to get some other input, because sometimes we don't always know maybe what is important right now in the industry. But then ultimately we come out with our selections, and that'll happen again this year, roughly end of April, 1st of May for both our programs. So we have other ways too that we our wood innovations. So it's really kind of wood innovations includes 2 grant programs, but we have some discretionary funds we're given each year that's not part of those competitive grants. Those funds, they're different from year to year depending on how what Congress provides to us. So some of those funds go out to the region, some of those we retain through the Washington office, and some of those funds are utilized through the Forest Products Lab. So it's kind of a collective team so that we can work with all the different partners throughout the country to help build up, again, support and wood markets and wood energy markets. We have some cooperative agreements that we work with some of our partners. I just want to make sure awareness for the wood education. Actually, now I forgot what work stands for, but work is they provide technical support for our biomass wood energy projects. So they will, if you have, quite a few of our grant proposals have reached out to work for technical proposals. So they'll take a look at your existing system and talk to you about what you think you want to use, and then they'll tell you, they'll give you technical support to tell you, yeah, a wood energy system will save you this much money, and it'll, you have the right sort of breadbasket around. It'll improve your efficiency. And if it won't, right? If natural gas is you're better off using that. They'll tell you that too. So it's really, really a great program. So we've started an innovative financing pilot. So we're working with an impact investment, a nonprofit, to help identify impact investing right now related to mass timber. And we think it's going to be pretty successful. We're kind of excited about it. It's really about educating people that apparently there's a lot of people out there with money that they need to more philanthropically invest. Right? So it's not a business or a bank investing. We find projects that may need some funding that they can help us out. And then we also do have key partnership support. We work with a lot of partners. So grant partners. So who do our grants generally go to, and whom do our coordinators work with? We work with state forestry. We work with state forestry associations very closely. Both are very focused on trying to provide markets for the timber that's within their states. We work with universities and schools. Schools generally, they're interested a lot more in wood energy projects. Universities, we work. Our grants go to universities, to try and help us, advance technologies related to either wood products and more recently a lot of advancement around needs for mass timber, which is still, sort of a nascent market or technology, and there's still a lot of things that we need to learn. We work with industry. That's manufacturers. Those are architects, engineers, right? Construction. Anyone who's going to be utilizing wood energy or wood products. Non-government organizations. Those are the nonprofits, and we have a lot of really good, strong partners there. Local, state, and other federal entities, and we work with tribes. So we're trying to build up markets with a lot of different, working with a lot of different partners, right? Because it's not just the Forest Service out there talking. It's not just you all. I mean, we need to do that collectively and share information and work across, try to work across boundaries. Interestingly enough, so I spent 5 years on the Carson National Forest doing plan revision, right? So when we manage our forest, we used to like to say, water and animals and trees, right? They don't see boundaries, right? They don't just stop there. So, we have to manage our forests, right, across boundaries. So we need to develop and strengthen wood product and wood energy markets, not just in our little, but, across boundaries. I think that makes us stronger. All right, so after this slide, I'm going to move more towards a mass timber focus related to our wood innovations. But we are starting to see a lot more grant proposals related to a biochar. This year we have actually received 13 proposals. We work with the U.S. Endowment, who's developed a torrefaction facility in John Day, Oregon. We are utilization of biomass for wood energy. Both biochar and the utilization of biomass, right? I think is pretty well known throughout the country in our forests in the West. A lot of the issues that they face is there's a lot of smaller diameter trees and a lot of biomass that just there's no markets for it. There's nowhere for it to go. Along the Appalachians, they have where hardwoods are predominant, but they're with the fall of nobody reads newspapers anymore. There's a great need to find markets for just the small diameter underutilized woods that there aren't a lot of markets for. So we're really trying to focus on ways to develop markets for those. Nanocellulose technology. I think at some point, I'm not an expert in that, but I understand that has great potential. Again, not so much for mass timber, but I think for just developing wood markets in general. Just recently, the U.S. Endowment, working with I say it right, Wairika, California. The state of California, they installed a bridge, a concrete bridge that had nanocellulose in the concrete mix, and so that will help. That helps curing times and strengthening of the concrete. So that's something that we're ideally exploring. Biofuels. So again, mass timber CLT is a big part of what we're trying to support. And I think that's primarily what the group here is for. We're seeing some, and I talk about it a little. Smaller dimensioned lumber for mass timber, right? Because there are a lot of smaller diameter trees that in the West, and we're seeing some now for hardwoods too. But smaller dimensioned lumber utilized in mass timber, which open up markets to be for smaller dimensioned trees. And then we have some grants that go to support manufacturing, whether that's a sawmill. We've supported some mass timber, so just a lot of different ways our grant program helps. All right, so wood innovation grants. I'm just going to talk about some of our grants. So you can see since 2015 the amount of funding that through our competitive grant program that we've awarded, and total grants are a number of grants that were awarded each year, and then of those, you can see the number of mass timber grants that supported mass timber projects. So that number has remained fairly constant since it's gone up. So this year we've received for 21 a total of 49 mass timber related grants, which is almost half of the grant proposals we received. So hopefully we're going to have some quality grants come out of that this year. All right, so I just got to talk a little about some of the mass timber grants that we supported in the year. So in 2017, we funded 13 grants focused on mass timber. So in 2017, we supported blast resistance testing for the DoD. That was we did that, and partially that was funded through with Woodworks. That was very successful, the blast timber, and I have a picture later that shows some of the work that DoD has done as a result of that blast testing. Examining the use of hardwoods in CLT. So since we've got several grants focused now on hardwoods, again, along the Appalachians, they've lost their markets, and so they're really trying to figure out how can they, they're trying to focus that on mass timber. And then creating mass timber manufacturing capacity. We did support, I believe, some CNC machines for a couple of different manufacturers, right? Because we can make the mass timber panels, but ultimately we need to fabricate them. And I think going forward, that's going to become more and more important, the fabrication of panels. 2018, 17 grants focused on mass timber we funded. Low value materials from the Pacific Northwest restoration programs. For us, the work on the ground is equally as important as the I think is what we utilize that wood for. Utilized again small diameter materials, CLT panels, which I think I talked about a little bit before, and then addressing affordable housing in the Northeast building market. And affordable housing and workforce housing are something I think are to become more and more important in the future. We're starting to see that in the West, particularly after the fires that we had this year. 2019, 21 grants were focused on that we funded. We funded one that was high velocity mass timber and used in high velocity hurricane zones. We're starting to fund some other alternative uses for mass timber, using CLT panels as highway noise barriers. I thought that was pretty neat. That has some potential. So there are some departments of transportation that are interested in that. Examining climate impacts of mass timber, and that is we're seeing more grants again in 20, and we're seeing some in 21. I think we're starting to realize that mass timber has really great building green benefits to retain carbon, but you also have to take a look at what's occurring on the ground, what's the embodied energy to get mass timber to the building as opposed to other building materials. So I think intuitively most of us can probably talk about that and understand that, but we're starting to fund some work that actually will show that definitively the science behind it, that the mass timber can store carbon for up to a period of time, use less energy, and be more green, if you will, or more of a sustainable building material than others to build buildings. But again, all of that work has to be tied to sustainable management of our forest on the ground. And then here, design work for new buildings, and in 2019 we did fund the design work for a courthouse and a K through 12 school. What's important, and one of the things that we try to, our Wood Innovation Grant will support we can't support construction, right, of a building, but we can support design, engineering, architectural design. We can support feasibility studies. We can support the work it takes to to work with the building and code officials to be able to get them to understand the importance of mass timber. And why that's important, I think, is a lot of a lot of architects and engineers and general contractors, mass timber is still new to them. A lot of them still don't know how to to price it or work with it yet. And so as an architect takes that on, and he or she may be new to that, right? There's a cost, right? A learning curve cost that may take away from their fees. And so the grant can help offset longer in mass timber, and we get more buildings, more exposure, and ideally the market grows. So next, 2020, we funded 17 grants. Interestingly enough, this grant proposal came in before we saw COVID-19, but it was analyzing the hygiene and moisture properties of CLT in healthcare facilities. So the group that got this grant, there were some studies that showed that mass timber or wood was better at I don't know if absorbing is the right word, but not leaving microorganisms exposed on the surface at other materials. And that was stainless steel and glass were some of those. So they're doing some testing. So that may have potential long-term use in laboratories and emergency rooms, operating rooms. So it could open up, broaden some new markets. There were several grants that year related to seismic testing for CLT buildings. So a lot of what we really try to look for, if we get grants that are maybe somewhat, we don't fund with our grant program pure research, but we want it to have a truly applicable use at the end of the grant funding. But particularly with mass timber, because there's still a lot of things that haven't been fully developed or designed. We're trying to support the ones that can help move the market along for that industry. And then last year we did fund the field demonstration of a CLT bridge. That bridge went up somewhere in Minnesota, if it's going to. And we also had funded work to treat mass timber or CLT, both before it's constructed and after a panel is constructed. Because if we're going to see mass timber used in exterior applications, I think we're going to have to figure out ways to be able to or environmentally friendly be able to treat it. So we did support some grants that focused on that. And some of the other things we've done with our Wood Innovations program is, we've tried to support some larger scale competitions. So we had the U.S. several years back, we had the U.S. Tall Wood Building Competition. We funded Mass Timber University Grant Competition, and then the National Building Museum, the Timber City exhibit. So don't quote me on this. We were working with the Fairbanks Museum here recently, and the gentleman that's the director, he told me that that exhibit is going to be exhibited in his museum in Vermont. So we'll wait and see. But that would actually be kind of interesting if that could become a permanent part of his museum. So I talked about the blast testing. So after the blast testing deal, the Department of Defense, they contracted to have Candlewood Suites hotels built on several of the different Army bases. And so the idea is they could then bring the bases closer to the road. The military for years has been moving any housing further away from the road, and it's not necessarily accessible by vehicles, so that their buildings become a little more friendly and are resistant to explosive devices. Or so that's kind of interesting. This, until recently, this is the Carbon 12 building, was the tallest building in the U.S. It's not going to be anymore. I'm going to show you that in the next slide. But this is one of our. So what I'm kind of showing just some of the buildings out there that we either supported or their work. The work has been done by strong partners, right? That we're more than happy to work with, and we think are that we want to be able to support. So this is the Ascent building. So it's not the it's a I think it's a rendering of the building, but that's going up in Milwaukee right now. That is going to be 25 stories, as I understand it, 18 stories of mass timber on a seven stories concrete platform. And that will be the tallest building in the United States when it's complete. And I wanted to show this building. This is a little, you see a little tiger paw next to the American flag. This is a Clemson's recreational building. And I know Clemson is looking to build some additional buildings utilizing mass timber. This is the second building, or if you prefer, it's the first building east of the Mississippi to be built, constructed using southern yellow pine. So I think Clemson likes to say it's the first building east of the Mississippi constructed of southern yellow pine, which is pretty neat. And it is indeed a beautiful building inside. I showed this one because this is in Iowa, and so we're seeing mass timber, in small cities throughout the country, not just in the larger metropolitan areas. And I think that's kind of I think that's really great. That's what we need, right? For the market to grow, we need to start to see buildings in more and more cities. This is the T3 building in Minneapolis. I didn't go into this one, but they built one in Atlanta, T3 Timber, Transportation and Technology. They built one in Atlanta that I went in. 7 stories of mass timber on a concrete, first floor is concrete. It's a beautiful building inside. All the beams and columns are completely exposed. The the ceiling is exposed mass timbering. It really is beautiful. All right, and so I wanted to show this. So the Forest Service is, this is the Nez Pierce Clearwater. It's their new SO, and they're incorporating mass timber into the building construction. And I think that is, I'm hoping that we now start to see more Forest Service buildings. So the state of the California forests are starting to look at mass timber for, they had several buildings that had burned during the fires they had in the past year. They're starting to consider mass timber as a building material for their buildings. They're looking potentially to create some designs for some of their supervisors' offices and their district ranger's office, mass timber, and hopefully we can start to get all of the Forest Service to look at mass timber and utilizing wood from our forests. I think that'll be great. That's kind of a long-term passionate goal of mine to push that. I'm not the guy that makes those final decisions, but I can keep pushing. I can keep nudging. I just wanted to show this. It's timber matting going in. So Sterling Lumber, they are still currently they have 2 facilities in Chicago and in Texas, the largest producer of CLT panels in the U.S. Although they still are making matting. But they make a lot of matting. All right, so just briefly then, I'm pretty close to my last couple of slides. What's next? What do I hear people talking about? What are our partners talking about? What's kind of the focus now is? So I think that we're starting to hear a lot of discussion, particularly after we had these fires. I think with the new administration coming in, an affordable and workforce housing using mass timber. There's still certainly, I think most understand there's still sort of a nut to be cracked for cost, but ideally, I think we're going to get there by using mass timber in not, with sort of pre-manufactured housing, and I don't necessarily mean individual housing, but housing that may be 2 or 3 stories. But I'll use the word affordable. In this case, affordable is where people can because housing is expensive, and I think we all know that there's a shortage of housing in the U.S. Tech companies are taking a strong interest in mass timber, particularly as it relates, because a lot of tech companies are trying to become carbon neutral, become more energy conscious. But as they think about mass timber, right, because mass timber can store carbon, but I think they also understand that, and it's important that mass timber tied to the work that goes back on the ground, right? So we need to not just, I think most forests, and I think that is national forest, private forest in the U.S., they manage, they're managing their forests sustainably, right? They're harvesting timber, but they're harvesting in a way that it's still ecologically good for the landscape, because we do need to do work on our nation's forest. If we don't, I think, and I'll show it on the next slide. But government buildings, I think we're going to start to see. I'm hoping we start to see more government buildings that are starting to think about mass timber in their buildings. I know that I have been talking, and some of our partners are working to try and get more government entities to think about mass timber. Department of Defense is a big one. I mean, they make a lot of buildings. Potentially, there's other applications that they could use mass timber. So my last slide, actually my second to last, but I kind of think that it's kind of how we, and I think a lot of the people who probably on this, when they say think about mass timber, mass wood markets, it equals sustainable forest management. It has to equal sustainable forest management. But I think we can flip those terms and just use them around. We can't talk about mass timber buildings being, a green building material unless we connect that back to the work that is being done on the ground. right? And by that, I mean, you know, a lot of our forests are overgrown. A lot of our forests are, you know, they haven't been uh, managed well. And not to say that it's because, you know, there's no place for the wood to go if I harvest it, right? So we need to go and those definitively, I think, have to be connected together. Whenever we think about wood energy, wood product markets, we're trying to create a more sustainable forest landscape. So those two are interconnected. So that's really what our team thinks about, our wood innovations team. We're trying to find markets, wood markets for wood, because if I don't have any market, I'm not going to do any forest management. And if I don't do forest management, long term, it has an impact on forest health. So that was my last slide. So that's who I am. So Greg, do I close out my slide? Do I stop sharing now?
Yeah, you can leave it on in case people have questions. You want to go back to the this particular slide. Sure. I do have a couple of questions just in general. If people want to apply for the Wood Innovation Grants, when could they, or when do you recommend they contact the regional representative to kind of find out about the upcoming year's grant programs and what the focus is? So
the grant program, you can so in October is when the RFP comes out. So National Forest Products Week is when the RFP comes out. So that's generally the third week of October. And every year, and it is, I didn't put the website on here, but eventually I share my slides with you, Greg. Do our slides become available to people? Because I can update the slide and put the website addresses on.
Yeah, what I'll do is I can share the slides, and also when I share the video on YouTube, I can include the links you want so people can directly go to find information for the website.
So our contact information for our coordinators, you'll be able to find that there. I would tell you that applying for a wood innovation or the community wood grant is, if you want to have a successful award, it takes a lot of work, right? We're looking for you know, it is very, very competitive. We're looking for awards that have given you know, what we think that will have success at the end of the grant life. And generally a successful grant will have strong partners. They will have, you know, they have fully developed ideas, and you know, this is what we want to achieve at the end of this. This is the, you know, our kind of our project. So it's probably good before, if you think you want to apply for a wood innovation grant, it's probably good, you know, to start just introduce yourself to one of the coordinators, you know, before the October cycle, right? So start, you know, maybe have that conversation in August or September, because they'll give you a little there, like, yeah, your idea is that actually is, you know, that's really good. You know, think about these things. You know, that's what they're there for. They're there to help you out, and right, and ultimately we want all of our grants to be successful. So hopefully that helps.
So people can start essentially around October, or contact the regional representative, and then I believe they have to be in by the end of January. That's typical.
End of January, and you can tell proposals where people wait until December to start thinking through I do, when I tell you that a good proposal takes time, it does take some time. A strong proposal, it takes a little bit. It takes a little bit of effort, and you know, and if you wait, right, we're always willing to give feedback. We're not going to write your proposal for you, but we're going to tell you maybe where you're weak, where you're strength, and where you need to improve. You know, and we'll listen to your ideas. Ultimately, that's your proposal and your ideas, but you know, we'll provide some expert guidance, if you will.
Yeah, and good. The website, I'm sharing the Wood Innovation site. Charlie Becker shared that. I'll put that into all panelists and attendees. Also, Kevin, you've been working, I think, with Stephanie Gripney of Impact Finance Center was the speaker yesterday, and I believe she's holding events now to connect the existing recipients of grants and I think kind of promote their work. I'm not clear on all of that, but I know she's connecting them in ways so that network can be formed.
Two things we're doing with her. We're doing a monthly grantee network session. So all of our grantees have been invited to. I believe we do it the second Tuesday of every month. But all of our grantees are sent an invite. We started that in our November, and it seems to be pretty successful. Those that are attending, we allow for at least 4 people to kind of present on what they're doing as part of their grant, what support they may need, and maybe how their grant can help others. And it has started to create some pretty good discussions, some good conversation. I think it's something. I've only been doing this Wood Innovations for a couple of years, but right away I saw that there's a lot of good things happening out there. Some of them people are doing the same stuff, you could probably through a little bit of knowledge sharing, and we've made some good connections on that grantee session. Through a little bit of knowledge sharing, I mean, you can bring your grant to the next level or pick up some pretty good ideas. So, and then what we had originally hired with the grant, why we gave her a grant, was to she's doing an investor club circle, if you will. So she's currently been working with impact investors to try and educate them around mass timber, and then quarterly we work with our partners that potentially need some funding. We're trying to bring the people who need funding related to mass timber, and that's anything to do with mass timber, because that's the market we're working with her to try and help grow, and bringing them together with investors. And it does take time. So we've only been doing this for about a year, but eventually we'll start to see where investors want to invest ideally in mass timber related projects. To buy a new CNC machine, whether you're you're trying to upgrade part of your facility, or you're building a building. She's now working with a couple of partners to try to help find funding for their buildings.
Perfect. Here's a question coming in from Frank Weeks. It's, can you speak to biodiversity in the management of forest and how this is addressed or accomplished?
Biodiversity, that's a biological question. Well, so yes, I can. So a little bit. So I have to give you the, I'm the layman, so I'll give you a layman's answer. So, right, if you look in, we'll talk about a national forest, if you will. So one of the reasons we have so much fire in the West is because we haven't been in there doing thinning. And we have a lot of even age stands on our forests, right? And both of those are bad. If I allow continual too much growth in a forest, and then I were to get a fire, and so for years we would suppress the fire so that growth built up. So I really need to go out and clear out. There's too many trees for the ground, and then a lot of those trees for large pieces of landscape might be the same age class, if you will. And so, right, a healthier forest, ideally, depending on the forest type, so say a ponderosa pine, there's a little more spacing between trees. There's debris on the ground, but not a lot. And you find that there are different age classes, right? You got young ones, you have open space, you'll have trees that might be 20 years old, trees that might be 60 years old, right? Because they all serve a purpose in that ecological health of that forest. So that's, if we haven't done that work, so they've gotten to a state where there's a subject to the term is uncharacteristic wildfire, because wildfire is a natural process of ponderosa pine, and they also are subject to insect disease, which you've seen in Colorado because we haven't done the work. So if we go in and we And every project that National Forest plans is planned with a restoration purpose. We're trying to bring it back to some, so that it can then grow back to some healthier condition. And so that sort of speaks to the biodiversity, I think, because if I create a forested landscape that is in a more, and we do have a lot of historical evidence of what a historical landscape should look like. And then landowners kind of conversely, right, if they're managing their lands for a forest, right, for timber, for forest product, right, if they're smart, right, they're managing their land so that they've always got continual growth, and they're going to have continual growth of different different tree classes, and they want to have their lands managed so that right, there's some debris on the ground. A lot of private landowners rely upon hunting on their lands, right? So they want to manage and they realize that the water runs through their land, right? So they need to they're trying to manage for timber harvest, but they're smart enough to understand they need to manage for forest health. So bottom line is, if we don't go in and do some work, right, and manage our forest, they become unhealthy. So, but we want to have some picture in mind of when we cut trees, right, that it grows back to a certain condition. Hopefully that sort of answers that biodiversity question and forest health.
Here's another question, this one from Lech Muzinski. Do you see Forest Service as one of the impact investors for mass timber technology?
Well, I never really thought about us as an impact investor. It's funny, I was reading an editorial today that the federal government should become an impact investor, but right, not let businesses be the one who invest. So in a subtle sense, perhaps, because we're trying to with that stimulating, we're trying to encourage proposals that are that we think have great potential for, and we'll just use that with mass timber, for the mass timber market or industry, and then we want to be able to fund those proposals that we think can do the most good, or are most needed, and to determine sometimes which ones are most needed. I mean, we look to other partners. I mean, we work with Woodworks and to help us identify projects, potential proposals that may, that have greater value to the industry than others. We see a lot of proposals we know down the line are going to be important, but they may not have they may not have an impact now. So we're trying to move that far up. I hope that was a good answer, Blake.
Yeah, I know there's the Impact Finance Center. There's so much investment out there in real estate, the very strong real estate construction market. So it's great. I'm seeing Stephanie's work to help kind of support and identify those, just to connect all those investors with the mass timber industry. I have another question from Lech Muzinski. What is your decision process when you select technology for building own facilities? Maybe Lech, I'll ask him to clarify on that, because I'm not quite sure what he's asking there. It's your decision process.
Ask me that question again.
Yeah, it is. What is your decision process when you select technology for building probably your own facilities? Yeah, I'm not quite clear on that either. Yeah, is it selecting the technology for the building, or is it selecting technology? Yeah, I'll ask Lech to re-ask that. But while he's doing that, Kevin, I just wanted to address, you brought up in your last slide how the technology industry, and certainly very aware of that here in the Northwest, is committing so much to becoming carbon neutral. And Microsoft is building a lot of mass timber buildings on their new campus. Certainly Google is as well. Facebook has them, and the tech companies have allocated $5 billion to help address housing issues. So there's kind of a hope here on the West Coast that some of that money begins to impact more literally the mass timber industry. It has.
Go ahead.
So we're kind of, I guess that's just kind of my, It's kind of both. You're seeing more of the same thing? I mean, it's hopeful. It's maybe it's wishful thinking on my part. I want that to happen more quickly. So
Well,
that
I'm hoping with the new administration, there's more of a focus on what things that can have I don't know what the right word, impact on climate change, right? We want to be able to reduce those negatives that are impacting climate change and potentially, right, I think healthy forest management building buildings that are less energy intensive are going to be things that do that. And building with wood, it can kind of do both of those. And I think that as the new administration pushes through that, I think we'll start to see, because, and I can tell you, I know the state of California is they are focusing on how they can increase markets for a lot of that small diameter stuff they have in the state, that they don't want to see it burn up. They don't want to see it fall to insect and disease. They want to see it there, 500 years from now. And so they're trying to figure out how do we find markets for that. And some part of that, I think their equation is, and it's a big equation, is mass timber. I think Oregon's thinking like that. And I think the tech companies will start to think like that. Right? How do we focus on that, that wood that's there, that, we don't want it to go up, we don't want it to go up in smoke, literally.
okay.
So I think that's why tech companies are they're, most of them, that's their playground, right? And it's a way to be able to support.
Like clarified his question. He said, how does the Forest Service decide on selecting technology for building new facilities? The Forest Service could have become a showcase for innovative mass timber solutions.
Well, I think a lot of it is we rely on our discussions and conversations with people like you. We don't always know. We spend a lot of time, and particularly in the Washington office. I mean, my new supervisor, now the assistant director, Brian Brashaw, and I, we trying to connect with the smart people out there. We're trying to understand what the needs are. So I think, and I'm familiar with your work, Lek, and I know that we've given grants your way, and I think that we don't want to be the the ones that say, well, this is what we have to have, right? So we kind of look to our partners to be able to help educate us and help give us that guidance.
And Lek did add in, particularly products made from lumber generated by restorative forestry programs.
I'm not sure quite. I'm not sure quite. So so I just know when we get our grant proposals, right, it goes through a national process, right? So there are certain things we're looking for in a proposal, right? So we know that it'll be success. So that's kind of one. That's sort of this subjective look at our proposals. Then we do kind of an objective look of, what is it going to be? Is this going to make a difference? And that's weighted a little less, but because our proposals are given a grading criteria. But we make mistakes, but we're really trying to find those proposals that can make a difference, that we think, that's needed. So I know like that, there's a lot of discussion about housing, building housing using mass timber. So we have several mass, panel producers in the country, but I think what we lack are fabricators, right? So if I make mass timber panels in one state and I got to ship it to, across the country to have it shaped into something different or fabricated, that's not good. So I think that we're going to need to see more fabrication, and certainly fabrication is part mechanics and part computers. But definitely we don't pretend to be the brain trusts. We spend a lot of time talking and working with other people. I mean, probably most you all on this call are the smart people out there, I would hope.
Thanks, and Lek expresses his eternal gratitude. I did one thing, just because in Oregon we had such record-setting forest fires recently, and I know they're trying to salvage a significant amount of that. And I've been asking, I don't think this data is out there, just how many buildings could have been constructed from that wood that burned. I mean, so much was lost, and I think, dude, isn't the increasing amount of forest fires, can you touch on that at all? I mean, is it a big topic within the U.S. Forest Service?
Well, we certainly don't like wood to burn up. I don't really have an answer for that. I mean, it is a concern, certainly. It's a big concern. I mean, that was a lot of timber. You know, it's tough. So, you know, after you have the fires, you go in and you evaluate. We like to, if the area is damaged, you know, if we get timber out of there. But you know, our first goal is to try to restore the landscape. Though. I mean, that's our primary concern. If the fires are too intense, I mean, that can burn the soils. You burn the soils, and that's a serious problem. I mean, because that's where it starts. So our biggest concern is how do we restore? How do we bring back the landscape? But certainly, we care about buildings being burnt and homes being lost. I shouldn't say that, but I mean, as far as the forested landscape, we definitely want to regenerate that.
Thank you. We're coming up on the hour, Kevin, and today is one of the days we have another presentation at 10:30. But what I'll do is communicate with you, and then share when we share this video the relevant links for finding out more information about the Wood Innovation Grants. Just attach them at the end of the video. Thank you for your time. And if people want to contact you, what would you recommend? How do they best do that?
I put my email and my phone number there. So either way.
Okay, perfect.
Email me and tell me you want to call. That's probably best because the schedule's busy. I mean, I answer my phone, but I'm always seem to be on video links or the phone.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time and all the great information. I'll see you online and in future meetings for the grant recipients with Stephanie's group as well. But thanks again for your time. Thank you, audience.
All right, thanks.